A K9 police dog barked continuously towards an elderly woman. The moment she gave this signal, the entire police squad and the dog rushed over and escorted her to the interrogation room. People often say that the airport is where the truest human emotions are found. It is a place of tearful reunions and poignant farewells. London's Heathrow Airport on the early winter days was no exception. Outside, a thick fog blanketed the area, causing flight delays and creating a somewhat somber and anxious atmosphere. Inside, the stream of people moved swiftly like a never-ending river, each carrying their own unique concerns. Amidst the chaos, a calm pair of eyes observed everything. They were not human eyes, but the deep amber eyes of Titan, a German Shepherd service dog. Titan stood rigidly next to his partner, Sergeant Liam Turner, at security checkpoint number 4. With his glossy black and tan coat and majestic posture, Titan looked like a bronze statue sculpted to guard the peace. But beneath that tranquil exterior was a keen intellect that few modern machines could match. Liam, a middle-aged man with a kind but resolute face, gently loosened the leash in his hand. He understood his four-legged friend better than anyone. He knew that Titan didn't view the world by examining clothes or luggage. He saw with his nose and felt with his heart. For Titan, the human world was a complex map of scents. The scent of joy was sweet. The scent of anxiety was sour. And the scent of lies was always acrid and unpleasant. As the crowd flowed past, Titan stood still, his damp nose slightly twitching as it categorized every scent in the air. Suddenly, the dog froze, his ears perked up like two receiving antennas. He had found something discordant in the airport's noisy symphony. Following Titan's intensely focused gaze was a group of 3 people hurrying towards the international departure gate. At first glance, they looked like an ordinary family preparing for a winter holiday. A young, fashionably dressed woman named Chloe Vance was carefully supporting a silver-haired elderly woman, Mrs. Margaret Thorne. Walking beside them was a small girl named Sophie with wide eyes that were cast downwards. An outsider would see a devoted granddaughter worried about her grandmother. Chloe repeatedly checked her watch, her other hand gripping Mrs. Margaret's thin arm as if afraid she might fall. Her mouth was a flurry of sweet urgency about their trip to Spain, about how they were running late. Mrs. Margaret walked with difficulty, her legs trembling and her eyes cloudy and vacant, like a person who had lost her soul. Little Sophie was silent, her tiny hand clutching the hem of her grandmother's coat like the only lifeline in a vast sea of people. But Titan was not fooled by this happy family performance. In Titan's world, there was no room for pretense. The dog detected a strange odor emanating from the group, from the young woman. It wasn't the scent of concern, but the pungent smell of adrenaline. The chemical produced when a person is stressed, frightened, or planning something risky. From the elderly woman, Titan smelled a heavy, dark scent of extreme despair, the smell of someone who had given up all hope. The contrast between the young woman's sweet words and the scent of genuine fear awakened the hunter's instinct inside Titan. As the group paused in front of the elevator doors to go upstairs, a strange moment occurred, so quickly that the human eye could easily miss it. Mrs. Margaret, who seemed confused and too frail to stand on her own, suddenly moved her bony hand. She didn't try to struggle or scream. Instead, she used her thin fingers to gently tap the outer surface of the old leather handbag she was carrying. There was a tapping sound, steady and deliberate. 3 taps, a pause, then 3 more taps. It was not the unconscious tremor of old age. It was a purposeful rhythm, Morse code. The very moment that tiny sound rang out, Titan froze. Every muscle in his body tensed like a bowstring about to be released. He didn't bark or growl immediately, but focused all his attention on the elderly woman. Liam, with years of partnership experience, instantly recognized the change in his companion. He looked in the direction Titan was staring. At that moment, the elevator door still hadn't opened. Mrs. Margaret, though her head was still bowed, discreetly glanced sideways. She wasn't looking at the bustling crowd, nor at the woman holding her arm tightly. She was looking directly at Titan. The gaze of a frail old woman met the eyes of a predator. Without waiting for any command from Liam, Titan lunged forward. The leash in Liam's hand stretched to its limit, but it wasn't a loss of control. Titan stopped right in front of the group of three, blocking the elevator entrance like a solid wall built of muscle and loyalty. A low growl rumbled deep in the dog's chest. It was not the sound of wild aggression, but the warning of a bodyguard who has detected a deadly threat. Nearby passengers were startled, quickly backing away, creating a large, empty space around them. Chloe Vance jumped, her high heels stumbling on the slick stone floor. A look of extreme panic flashed across her face, like a thief caught red-handed just as her hand touched the gold jar. But very quickly, the mask of a successful woman anxious for her family was put back on. She glared, her face flushed with anger. "Hey, what the hell are you doing? Get your damn dog under control right now!" Chloe shrieked, her voice acrid and echoing in that corner of the concourse. "He's going to give my grandmother a heart attack. Do you even know who we are?" Liam didn't flinch. He stepped closer, shortening the leash but not ordering Titan to retreat. He knew his partner. Titan was never wrong. If he blocked someone's path, that person definitely had a problem. Liam raised a hand to signal the murmuring crowd to calm down, his eyes sharp and cold, pinned firmly on the woman in red. "Ma'am, I apologize for the inconvenience," Liam said, his voice deep but carrying the weight of authority. "But my partner is reacting very strongly to your group. This is a mandatory security procedure. I need you to remain calm and present identification for all three of you." "That's ridiculous," Chloe hissed through clenched teeth. Her hand, with its bright red painted nails, gripped Mrs. Margaret's frail shoulder so tightly that the old woman winced in pain. But she didn't dare cry out, just bit her lip. "Are you police officers so bored you've gone mad? My grandmother is confused. Her memory is poor. We're in a hurry to see a specialist doctor in Spain. The flight is about to close. Get out of the way." She deliberately spoke loudly, directing pleading glances towards the people around her, trying to play the role of a devoted granddaughter being harassed by the police. A few people began to whisper, pointing at Liam, showing sympathy for the unfortunate family. But Titan didn't care about public opinion. While Chloe was busy performing for the crowd and Liam, the dog quietly moved closer to Mrs. Margaret. Instead of showing fear towards the sharp teeth or the massive size of the animal, the old woman had a strange reaction. Her cloudy eyes, which had been staring vaguely into space, suddenly found a focal point. It was Titan's amber eyes. Mrs. Margaret tremblingly drew her thin, liver-spotted hand out from her loose coat sleeve. She didn't withdraw it. She didn't tremble with fear. Slowly, and with great difficulty, she placed that hand on the top of Titan's head. The dog's soft, warm fur seemed to transmit a final bit of strength to her. And then, those bony fingers began to move. Tap, tap, tap. 3 light, steady taps on the dog's head. Then a pause for a breath. Then it was repeated. Tap, tap, tap. Titan stood still as a statue, accepting the touch. He didn't wag his tail or nuzzle his head, but just stood there as a solid anchor for the old woman, as if he understood he was the only lightning rod for her distress signal. Sophie, the little girl huddled next to her, witnessed the entire scene. Her wide eyes looked up at Liam. In the depths of those childish eyes was a struggle between extreme fear and fragile hope. She moved her lips, wanting to say something. "Mister," Sophie whispered, her voice fractured like the sound of crushed, dry leaves. But immediately, Chloe Vance darted a look down. Just a quick, razor-sharp glance, accompanied by her other hand squeezing the girl's wrist hard. Sophie instantly fell silent, bowing her head, her whole body shaking uncontrollably. She fearfully shrank back, hiding behind her grandmother, trying to become invisible. But Liam had seen everything. He saw the tapping rhythm on Titan's head. He saw Chloe's threatening glance. And more importantly, he saw the interaction between Titan and the old woman. A confused, forgetful elderly person would usually panic or be bewildered by a large dog. They would never have enough presence of mind to perform such a deliberate, repetitive action. It wasn't a caress. It was a code, a silent language sent out in the eye of the storm. All doubt in Liam's mind vanished, replaced by the instinct of a law enforcement officer. He realized he wasn't facing a simple disturbance or a difficult family. He was standing before a crime in progress, happening in broad daylight. Liam loosened his grip on the leash slightly, giving Titan more freedom to guard, while his right hand rested lightly on the holster of the stun gun at his hip. The gesture was small, but enough to send a powerful message. His face was no longer amiable or polite, but became cold and resolute. "Ma'am," Liam said, his voice not loud, but cutting through all the surrounding noise. "I require you to release the elderly woman immediately." Chloe froze. She recognized the change in the officer's demeanor. Are you threatening me? I'll sue you. I'll sue this whole airport." "You have the right to do whatever you want after we sort everything out," Liam retorted, taking another step forward, closing the distance. "But right now, you, the elderly woman, and the child will come with me to the security room. Immediately. If you resist or intentionally cause a disturbance, I will be forced to use strong measures to subdue you." Titan let out a sharp, clean bark. The resounding sound was decisive, like an exclamation point to his owner's statement. The dog bared his teeth slightly, his gaze locked on Chloe, ready to lunge if she made any move to flee. Chloe turned pale. She looked around, searching for an escape route. But in front was the large figure of Liam. Beside her was the terrifying service dog, and surrounding them were the curious eyes of the crowd, who were beginning to doubt her excessively aggressive attitude. She knew that if she ran now, Titan would catch her before she could take 10 steps. She gritted her teeth, loosened her hand from Mrs. Margaret's shoulder slightly, but still stood close, as if to use the two of them as a human shield. "Fine," Chloe said, her voice trembling with anger and fear. "Let's go then. Let's see how you explain yourselves for making my grandmother miss her medical flight. Please go this way." Liam gestured toward the corridor leading to the internal security area, but he did not go first. He stepped back slightly, signaling for Chloe to lead the way, separating her from Mrs. Margaret and Sophie. "You go first. The elderly woman and the child will come with me and Titan." Chloe intended to object, but when she saw Titan's eyes, she swallowed her words, stomped off resentfully, the sound of her heels echoing shrilly on the floor. Liam gently stepped beside Mrs. Margaret. He didn't touch her, just knelt down to her eye level, his voice becoming unusually warm, completely different from his stern tone moments ago. "Ma'am, you are safe now. Please go slowly. Titan and I will be right beside you." Mrs. Margaret looked up at Liam, her eyes brimming with tears. She didn't say anything, just nodded slightly. Her hand remained lightly placed on Titan's back as the dog moved close beside her, slowly and patiently adjusting his pace to the old woman's weak steps. Sophie timidly took her grandmother's other hand, her eyes still nervously glancing at Chloe walking ahead, but her small hand was no longer shaking as much. The group moved through the airport hall like a strange procession. An angry young woman walked in front, followed by an elderly woman, a little girl, and a gigantic police dog walking alongside them like bodyguards. The crowd automatically parted to make way, and the whispers gradually faded and stopped entirely as they entered the quiet corridor. When the security room door closed behind them, cutting off all the noise and bustle of the passenger terminal, the space suddenly became suffocatingly quiet. The cold, white fluorescent light in the room shone upon 4 faces with contrasting expressions. Liam pointed to the cold metal chair in the corner of the room, completely separated from the soft sofa area opposite. "You sit there," he ordered Chloe. Then he turned to Mrs. Margaret and Sophie, gesturing to the sofa. "Please sit here, ma'am and child. There will be warm water immediately." Chloe slumped onto the chair, crossing her arms over her chest and crossing her legs, trying to maintain an air of arrogance. But Liam noticed the beads of sweat on her forehead and the way she constantly glanced at the door, calculating, anxious. Titan needed no direction. After Mrs. Margaret sat down, the dog automatically lay down at her feet, his head facing Chloe, forming an inviolable physical barrier between the predator and the prey. Liam walked to the desk and picked up the phone. He knew this call would confirm what his and Titan's instincts had told him, but before dialing, he looked at Mrs. Margaret one more time. The old woman was trembling as she raised the cup of water that a female officer had just brought in. She looked at Titan at her feet, then at Liam. In her eyes, Liam saw the relief of someone just pulled back from the abyss. And he knew the story of the 3 soft taps contained a secret much greater than a typical family dispute. Now, Liam put the phone down after asking a colleague to check the missing persons database, and he turned his chair to face Chloe, his eyes seeming to pierce her soul. "Let's start over. And this time, I advise you to tell the truth, because my partner," he gestured with his chin towards Titan, "he doesn't like lies." Chloe managed a weak, lopsided smile. She knew she was holding useless cards in this game, but the instinct of a professional swindler made her want to struggle one last time. "I told you," Chloe hissed. "She's my grandmother. Her name is Mary Smith." The name was ridiculously common. At that exact moment, Titan lifted his head from the floor. He stared at Chloe and let out a short, dry, cold bark. No need for a lie detector. Titan's reaction was the clearest verdict. Liam sighed, shaking his head wearily. He picked up the file that the printer had just ejected from the incoming data. His eyes quickly scanned the lines of black text on the white paper, and every word he read was like a brick, solidifying the wall of accusation against the woman huddled in the chair. Margaret Thorne. Liam read the name aloud, his voice clear, breaking the oppressive silence. Born in 1942, residing at St. Jude's Nursing Home, Surrey area. He looked up, meeting the eyes of Chloe Vance, who was now trying to avoid everyone's gaze. She was reported missing exactly 24 hours ago. And you, Chloe Vance, your name is also in the personnel file of that nursing home. A temporary employee who started 2 weeks ago. Chloe pressed her lips together, her hands clutching the hem of her skirt. Her former confidence and arrogance had vanished, leaving only the trembling of a criminal cornered. Liam walked closer, placing the paper on the cold metal table. He continued, his voice no longer harsh but sad, as he recounted the cruel script she had orchestrated. You took advantage of a quiet night shift. You lightly drugged her, just enough for her to walk but not lucid enough to resist or call for help, and cruelly, you involved an innocent child in this. He turned to look at Sophie. The little girl was curled up on the sofa, her hands tightly clutching the cup of warm water the female officer had given her. Her wide eyes still held unshed tears. "Sophie," Liam called gently, "you don't have to be scared anymore. This woman told you that your grandmother was sick, right?" Sophie looked up, her small lips trembling. She glanced at Chloe once more, but this time, with Titan lying in between, she felt safer. She nodded, her voice tiny as a whisper. She said, "Grandma had a secret illness. If I told anyone, or if I didn't listen to her, Grandma would die. She said we had to take her far away for treatment, and I had to go along to take care of her." The child's innocent confession was like a bucket of cold water thrown in Chloe's face. It was the most ruthless psychological manipulation Liam had ever witnessed, exploiting the devotion and fear of loss of an 8-year-old child to serve bottomless greed. "And your goal?" Liam turned back to Chloe, his eyes now holding the contempt he tried to suppress beneath his professional veneer. "Was not Spain, nor any doctor. You plan to take them across the border, drain all of Mrs. Margaret's lifelong retirement savings from her international bank account, and then abandon the two of them in a foreign land, without money, papers, or relatives." Chloe burst into tears. Not tears of remorse, but tears of fear for herself. I was in so much debt," she sobbed, trying to justify herself. "I didn't mean to hurt them. I just needed the money. I would have left them somewhere safe. You already hurt them." Liam cut her off, his voice hardening. "You stole their safety. You poisoned a child's mind and exploited the weakness of an old woman." 2 other police officers entered the room at Liam's signal. The dry click of handcuffs echoed as they restrained Chloe. She no longer had the strength to resist, walking unsteadily between the 2 officers, head bowed, leaving behind the victims she had almost pushed into tragedy. When the security room door closed behind the criminal, the air in the room seemed to be relieved of tons of pressure. Mrs. Margaret, whose sedation seemed to be wearing off thanks to the time past and the intense nervous stimulation she had just experienced, exhaled a long breath. She tremblingly placed the cup of water down on the table, then turned and hugged Sophie tightly. The 2 of them cried in each other's arms, tears of relief and the passing of fear. Titan, the large dog, seemed to understand that the fighting mission was over. He stood up, stretched, and then ambled over to the sofa. He was no longer the terrifying predator, but became a gentle giant friend. He nudged his large head into Mrs. Margaret's hand, then gently licked Sophie's hand. Liam smiled at the sight. He waited for the 2 to compose themselves a bit before stepping closer. He knelt on one knee on the floor to be at their eye level, gently petting Titan's head. "Mrs. Margaret," Liam asked, his curiosity having grown since they were in the concourse, "I still wonder about one thing. How did you know how to give that signal to Titan? Most people, especially the elderly, would be very afraid to see a service dog rush towards them and block their path. Why did you dare to touch him and tap in that rhythm?" Mrs. Margaret smiled, a weak smile that held a whole sky of memories. She reached out to stroke Titan's thick coat, her eyes distant, as if seeing a beloved figure from the past reappear through the image of this dog. "My late husband, Arthur," she began to recount, her voice deep and warm, carrying the resonance of old fairy tales. "He wasn't a romantic man with flowers and gifts. He was a police officer, a service dog trainer for the Royal Police Force his entire life. She paused for a moment, as if to contain her emotion. Back then, he often brought the dogs home. He taught me how to be friends with them. He always told me, "Margaret, humans can use words to hide a dark heart, but dogs cannot. They don't hear lies. They hear heartbeats and smell the scent of fear, the scent of truth." Liam listened in silence, taking in every word. It was a philosophy he had also been taught, but coming from the mouth of an old police wife, it became strangely sacred. When he was old and frail in his hospital bed, "Mrs." Margaret continued, "He still worried about me. He instructed me very carefully. He said, 'If one day I am no longer here, and you are in danger but cannot speak to ask for help, seek out the four-legged friends. If you see a service dog, don't be afraid of it. Look it in the eyes and tap 3 times. A well-trained dog and a good handler will understand that it is not a normal caress. It is the code of survival." She looked down at Titan, her eyes glistening with tears. "When I saw this dog at the airport, saw the way he stood tall and those bright eyes, I remembered Arthur. I remembered his advice. I gambled my life and Sophie's on the belief that this dog would hear my heart." Sophie looked up, her eyes sparkling with admiration. She wiped away the remaining tears on her cheeks. "I saw Grandma do it too. I was so scared then. I was afraid the dog would bite Grandma, but she still did it. Grandma is very brave, isn't she, mister?" Liam nodded strongly. He looked at Mrs. Margaret with all respect. "Yes, Sophie. Your grandmother is the bravest person I've ever met." And Titan. He gently patted his companion's shoulder. "He did not fail Arthur and your grandmother's trust." A moment later, the security room door opened. Rushing footsteps sounded. Sophie's parents, Mrs. Margaret's granddaughter, and son-in-law rushed into the room. They had just received the news from the police and had driven at breakneck speed to the airport. The reunion scene exploded with happiness. The mother hugged Sophie, sobbing. The father knelt beside his mother-in-law, gripping her frail hands tightly, repeatedly apologizing for not being able to protect her. The cold room of the airport suddenly became unusually warm with family affection. Liam stood back in a corner, giving them privacy. He leaned against the wall, crossing his arms over his chest, silently observing. Titan sat beside him, his tail gently thumping as he witnessed the human joy. Before leaving, Sophie's father stepped up to Liam. The tall man firmly shook Liam's hand, his voice choked with emotion. "Thank you, sir. Thank you for bringing them back to us. If they had been taken away, I don't know how I would live." Liam smiled, shaking his head slightly. "Don't thank me," he pointed down at Titan. "Thank him. He's the one who heard the call for help." Sophie ran over, holding a small cookie from the snack plate on the table. She timidly offered it to Titan. "Thank you, Titan. You're my hero." Titan gently took the cookie, his tail wagging furiously. To him, this was not a great feat. He was simply doing what he was born and trained to do: protect the vulnerable and listen to the things that humans miss. The incident concluded as the evening sun began to set outside the airport window, dispelling the gloomy fog of the morning. The story of the rescue at Heathrow Airport quickly spread through the police force and in the newspapers the next day. People spoke of Sergeant Liam's keenness and Mrs. Margaret's courage and intelligence. But more than anything, the story became a beautiful modern parable of trust and instinct. It reminded everyone that, in this loud and hurried world, sometimes the real heroes don't wear bright capes. They might just be silent, four-legged friends with a sharp nose and an absolute loyal heart. And sometimes, to be saved, we need to be brave enough to place our trust in the silent signals, in the invisible connections between human and animal, connections truer than any eloquent words. Liam and Titan resumed their shift, walking along the endless corridors of the airport. They merged back into the flow of people, observing, listening again. But their steps seemed lighter, for they knew that today they had kept a world whole for a family.